Multi-tenancy is an architecture in which a single instance of a software application serves multiple tenants or customers. Each tenant has its own set of data, as a major security concern is data partitioning across accounts or tenants. For example, users from tenant A should not be able to access data from tenant B and vice versa. The most common use case for multi-tenant systems are SaaS-based applications, which use different levels of data isolation depending on the domain of the application. Let's start by going through the most common techniques for implementing multi-tenancy. In the silo strategy, we have a separate database instance per tenant. This approach provides a strict data separation at the expense of both higher infrastructure costs and a more complicated tenant setup because you will have to provision and manage a new database instance for each tenant that onboards your SaaS offering. The nature of a single tenant silo means you're never sharing resources, but as we mentioned, of course, this comes with pricing concerns. In the pool model, all tenants share one database instance. In this approach, data for all the customers sits side by side, but each table or view contains a partitioning key, usually the tenant identifier, aka tenant ID, which we use to filter the data by. The pool model uses resources more efficiently, saves the most on operational costs, and reduces your infrastructure overhead. On the other hand, there's no separation of tenant data, and there's a risk that data may leak to other customers if we forget to apply the query filter, whether it's an additional where clause or a local per transaction variable. And lastly, the bridge strategy. In this approach, we share the same database instance but use a different schema for each tenant. Schemas are technically the same for all tenants, the same tables and constraint definitions for all, but they remain isolated from each other. This strategy makes sense if you have a few high-value tenants using your business-to-business SaaS. Otherwise, you might be best using the pooling strategy augmented with RLS or row-level security. Regardless of which approach you choose for your application, what we'll showcase in the next lesson should be helpful to understand how durable providers can benefit your future multi-tenant Nest.js applications.